The UPMC sports medicine experts in Central PA are here to help keep you in the game and improve your quality of life, no matter your age or activity level. Visit upmc.com/Central PA SportsMed to learn more.
Welcome, everyone, to another edition of the Pennsylvania High School Football Report. I'm Brian Linder. Got two guys here today with me, Dan Sostek and Eric Epler. Guys, The Rock is coming to WrestleMania. What do you think?
Yeah, he'd make more money in movies, man.
I mean, his movies aren't good either, so I think he's making the right pivot.
It's The Rock, though.
His movies killing China, brother. That's all that matters.
He's going to be in Philadelphia at WrestleMania against Roman Reigns. He played Pennsylvania high school football, so it's relative.
Brian, you could say something like, the San Diego conductor has returned to the symphony after 20 years away, and I would have just as much of an opinion about that.
It's The Rock. The long-awaited matchup is going to sit at the head of the table. I figured I'd catch you guys off guard with that. Look, there's a lot of people out here.
If The Rock wanted me to care about him, he would have committed to Pitt instead of Miami. So,
but it paid off for him.
Yeah.
Guys, we got a lot going on. Obviously, it's the off season, but we say football is year round. You can always find something to talk about. Last week we kind of left off. Epler, you and I ran through the first 1 through 3A of the Pennsylvania Sports Writers all state team. Wanted to kind of run back through the last three divisions. We got a few other things going on too. We'll touch on. I think we got a lot to talk about today, but let's hop right into the all state teams. I mean, we pick up in 4A. Stone Saunders repeats as player of the year. And if you guys missed our first episode, you can go back. Ep kind of talks about the work that he puts into it. Ep, this is writers from all across the state, but Ep kind of gathers and collects all this information and their votes and stuff. Stone Saunders repeating. And it was another kind of well-represented for Central Pennsylvania here with the 4A team, right up?
Yeah, it was kind of surprising. I mean, I think from our perspective, because obviously we've seen Stone for 3 years now, and to kind of, coincide with the kind of year that Tyke Hayes had for Aliquippa, I thought I was a little bit surprised, actually. I mean, not that Stone doesn't deserve to be co-player of the year. I mean, he had a tremendous season again, 3,500 yards. Passing 56 TDs. It was interesting about Stone, too, is when he started the season, he was 29th on Pennsylvania's career passing list, and he's now 5th. And he's only the 5th guy to breach 10,000 yards in his career in the history of people. So that's pretty impressive. So you can't really deny that he had the goods, and obviously McDevitt made it back, another district title, before getting foiled by Dallas there in that semifinal. So he had a tremendous season, but I thought when the votes would start to come in that Tyke Hayes would sort of separate himself a little bit. And it literally was like Stones went ahead, Tyke's went ahead. Stones went ahead the entire time they came in before all was said and done. So that was obviously a tight race. And there were a lot of other tight races too, but the quarterback position was the one that we were really sort of paying attention to. Aliquippa's Quentin Good, unbelievable season too, led him to the title. And Zach Hahn certainly deserved it for Man Up Central. He did a little bit of everything for those guys there. Well, so that was the biggest sort of the quarterback spot was the biggest sort of the biggest eye opener for me.
Well, yeah, and the player of the year thing too, you kind of bring it up about, the years. It was kind of surprising. It was such a close race almost. But I think, us being so close to Bishop McDevitt and kind of following them game to game and kind of following that the last couple of games and kind of having that sour taste in our mouths, so to speak, with, how he kind of the offense didn't play as well as they would have liked to the last couple of games. I feel like maybe to us, it's kind of easier to kind of throw that context in. But then you look across the state, you look at Stone Saunders' statistics, and they're just insane. And so you kind of compare that to Tyke Hayes' numbers, which are great, but there are a lot of running backs that put up similar numbers to that. There aren't many quarterbacks that put up the numbers Stone did. I kind of feel like when you sometimes as beat writers, right, we get so close to we kind of miss the forest for the trees a little bit. And, I mean, you can say that Aliquippa plays a tougher schedule than McDevitt during the regular season, all those things. But when you put both their numbers on the paper, it certainly is justifiable to kind of say Stone was the co-MVP.
Well, you did the story, Dan, and Alex Irby ended up setting the state single season touchdown passing record, but Stone may have tied it. The previous one by Jeff
was close. Yeah, I don't think he got there.
He was like 2 away going in that Dallas game, and did he throw 1 or 2 in Dallas?
I think one.
So he's like tied for second all time most touchdown passes in the season, or third?
He is second. Yeah, I think you're at one. I think Irby's 170. I believe it's a 20 TD gap now.
Well, I'm talking about just in a single season, though.
It was 56. I mean, he had 56 touchdown passes
behind Hohenstein. Yeah. So he's third. Was the third greatest season passing touchdown wise of anybody. I think that I probably would have voted for Tyke only because we did have that. The way he finished so strong, and having that ability. But I'll tell you what, looking at this group, you mentioned some of the quarterbacks. You didn't mention Jake Wolf. All these guys, senior. Stone's the only junior. But as far as like a career group between your running backs and your quarterbacks on the 4A All-State team, not just one season, but as a career, they all. I mean, Aaron Crossley's a kid who had a heck of a career at Wyoming area. Tucker Teets at Sealing Grove. Jake Elko, he went up for over 2,000 yards. Boyd Scarbeck. That's your running backs to go with Tyke Hayes.
I think you just called Jake Williams Jake Elko.
Jake Williams. Yeah, Jake Elko. Jake Elko sounds like a professional wrestling name.
That sounds like a good name. That should be that's his stage name. He's going to name his stage name after his high school. That'd be pretty good.
But no, I mean, as a career group, the quarterback or running back group on this thing has accomplished this. A lot of them just, at least statistically. So, and then I guess we can jump into it. I mean, we'll go ahead and touch on this. Rico Scott makes the team. And then as we are talking today, he was also named Gatorade's Pennsylvania Player of the Year. I think that's a little surprising. I think he had a hell of a year for Rico Scott. And I think, I think we ranked him as the number 1 ranked player in his class in the state. But with Alex Irby having the year he had and Stone Saunders and Tyke Hayes, I think I might have been a little bit surprised. What did you guys feel about that?
Does Gatorade, sometimes it feels like Gatorade kind of tries to factor in future success too a little bit to try to say, hey, look, we gave this guy Player of the Year and then he's in the NFL, something like that. So, in that regard, the Alabama stuff probably helps. But Rico had a great year. He had a really great year.
Like 80 balls, didn't he?
What?
Didn't he catch like 86 balls or something like that?
I mean, you can make an argument he was like as productive as almost any wide receiver in the state. But I was a little surprised given the QB play we had. With the QB play we had, surprised someone like Quinn Martin didn't get consideration either for leading his team to their state title. There are a couple other guys, but like I said, I think Gatorade's also kind of I feel like they go kind of production plus what they're seeing on the field and what they think you're going to be at the next level.
And I think we all love Rico. I mean, he's a player, so we don't want to knock him here. It's just it was a little bit surprised with these quarterback seasons that were out there.
Yeah, I mean, it never hurts when you have Alabama behind your name too, and again, that doesn't take away anything Rico did.
No, there's a reason he has Alabama behind his name. It's not just they don't just randomly give out stuff.
When you're catching 1,800 plus yards in a season and 90 grabs or whatever he had, that's pretty damn impressive. But I still think this not being a classification thing. You naturally, I think, when you talk about Gatorade Player of the Year, even though Stone won it last year. Which is 4A, obviously, same group. You're talking about Samaj Jones, you're talking about Tyke Hayes, and these types of players too. So I think when you get that kind of honor, I think it is a little bit surprising, just because him playing down in 4A. So
What was holding that Rico Scott plus 1,000 Gatorade Player of the Year ticket? Go cash it in.
Yeah, there you go.
The UPMC sports medicine experts in Central PA are here to help keep you in the game and improve your quality of life, no matter your age or activity level. Visit upmc.com/centralpasportsmed to learn more.
I'm just looking back over this All-State team, and all All-State teams are good, but this is a really interesting team. I mean, Paul McClune for Twin Valley's offensive lineman I love. He's going to Navy, I think. Brett Myers is out there, and they ran the heck out of the ball, and he was a road grader out there. Courtney Dunn won the Freilich Award out at McKeesport. He and Keith Spell out that way. I love those guys. I think they're both going to like IUP or either Cal U, I think. Dyson Delaney from Jersey Shore is a heck of a player. But guys, have you seen these clips of Kevin Haywood?
Oh, yeah.
Like tossing guys around at the All-American.
I've said it before that Kevin Haywood just sounds like a name of an offensive tackle from like 1985 on like the New York Giants. It just sounds like a guy that would be as big as he is, as strong as he is, and sounds like someone who have the film he does.
Keeping on the wrestling theme, I think I actually described him one time as like the Andre the Giant of Pennsylvania, because he's like 6'8", and we got him at 305 on the All-State team. I think he's like probably 320 or 330 now. He is massive. And guys, if you haven't seen it, go look on social. I mean, how Epler, I'm sure you probably saw the block of the one defenseman who popped him in the face, but I don't know how to explain it other than he big brothered him. He just
Yeah, and we've been hearing all year too from our guy Evan, right? Having covered football down in that area, he was a big Pope John Paul II fan, chirping in our ear. Also, we were like, we know, we get it. But yeah, a guy like Hayward was just dominant. I mean, it was sort of ridiculous at times on what he would do to defenders. So I'm also happy too, like, a lot of the guys who really steered the LL this year, and obviously, everybody knows the LL, ballooned with the merger with Berks, ballooned to a 38 team conference like we have in the Mid-Penn. And the guys there were really honored. Sort of the stakeholders, the guys who really, like you mentioned, Williams, a guy like Aaron Enterline, who was just fabulous, the wideout from Manab Central. There were a lot of LL guys on this team that received a ton of votes. There were a lot of close races, especially in the top three classes. We had a lot of tight races in 2A, including for Coach of the Year, which came down to actually a single vote between Dante Green and Jim Roth. The rest of the Coach of the Years were there was a pretty good separation, other than 4A, with Rich Manella receiving a good amount for Coach of the Year, but of course Mike Warfield from Aliquippa won that. Getting back to the LL guys too. I mean, the guys who really needed to be there, I thought the voters really checked them, really looked after them and got them on the squad.
Interline was another career guy. Like, he's had a really good career, not just this year, but he was in that 90 catch range. Lex Cyrus, guys, if you don't know Lex Cyrus's name, junior from Susquehanna Township, he made his team at receiver. He won the state 100 meters. He's got some big offers, Penn State, some SEC offers. He could have a special year next year because they got a young quarterback named Torrin Evans coming back who threw for like 2,400 yards. Zach Mel's on here, big spring, really unheralded kid.
Really good player.
5 on your defensive line. He's a really, really good football player, so it's glad to see him make it. Cam Lindsey's a big name, a Dan favorite out of Aliquippa who's going to go to Pitt. And I'll tell you another name that jumps out real quick. Alex Tash at Latrobe, the linebacker, is quickly developing into, he's a junior, one of the top probably 4, 5, 10 players in the state next year. He's a big-time recruit. I think Southern Cal just flew in to see him last week. I was reading on one of the Pittsburgh sites. He's a big-time kid, too.
Yeah. This was an impressive group. I mean, it really was. I mean, 4A was tough. We had a lot of, like I said, the biggest classification as far as nominations was 2A, which is always the case because you get a lot of these guys. 2A, for some reason, seems to be always RBLB, really, really heavy. And it also included, I think, probably 16 or 17 offensive lineman nominees, too. But when you got to 4A, too, we had less sort of volume in nominations, but we had a lot of votes that were really close, really close. If I asked the voters to pick 4, those 4 guys almost all the time in every category clearly separated themselves when the voting shook out. So, and then there were a couple spots left over for ties in some athlete positions, but overall, just an unbelievable group. And you mentioned, I mean, it was a really good year for 4A as far as your top level guys.
5A, Jabri Wallace-Coleman from MOTEP wins Player of the Year. Devin Johnson from MOTEP wins Coach of the Year. Talked them for the season. They said they were going to do this. They were tired here, and people talk. I do think the 5A Player of the Year is interesting. I think I probably would have voted for Jasir Whittington. I think he was probably the best player on MOTEP. I might have voted for Mikal Davis. I understand why people voted for Jabri because he was kind of the flashier guy. But, I felt like Jasir was probably their best player this year. And I felt like Mikal, his improvement, and he's an Army commit, but I think his improvement at quarterback really was an X factor for them too. How did the voting go in that one?
The voting was pretty clear cut in 5A. I mean, there were not a lot of, coming down to the wire. Like you always get to that like 25, 30, if we use a percentage, like 75% of the votes are in. I know I have 10 more emails and 10 more sets of ballot. So that's about 75%. And you're like, okay. And you see the end game. You almost say, okay, this is going to be tight the whole way through. 5A was really not like that. 5A was absolute blitz of guys like Mikal Davis getting it. And it's interesting too, because it's almost like the St. Joe's Prep issue. Obviously, if an Anthony Sacca is being pursued by 30 different FBS squads or Power 5 squads, you know what I mean? And he's got some good numbers, he's gonna get votes. But a lot of their offensive guys, it's so spread out and they're so dynamic in so different ways that their numbers are not their numbers sort of pale in comparison to, say, a Cole Bartram, a 5A guy like Bartram or a guy like Cabrera who has unbelievable numbers but he might be he's the only guy on the squad that's
like that for him too. Defense is like that.
Yeah.
I kind of give them credit because we'll be honest, we do get stats from some coaches. We're like, look, there's no way. There's no way these guys have, 7 guys with 200 tackles. And their defensive stats are a little bit more realistic too. But, they have dogs everywhere. So.
Right. Yeah, like a perfect example, the 2 wideouts for St. Joe's Preps, and we're not at 6A yet, but I'm using them as an example, is David Washington and Brandon Raymond, okay? Those guys combined were about 560 yards, receiving yards for the season. And you're thinking, that's, how do you sort of value that where a kid from Parkland, say, who is playing an unbelievable schedule is at 1,400 yards or something like that. So how do you sort of weigh that? Well, you watch. You sort of look.
You watch David Washington play football,
right? And that's how you sort of evaluate that. But that's sort of the case a little bit with Imhotep too. These guys don't have the magnificent numbers, but they're just freaking players. You just know that's what they are. So a guy like Jabri Wallace-Coleman obviously has been consistent all year. He may have sat a couple second halves in their games. But this was really a strong really season for Imhotep. And like you mentioned, Brian, too, we had heard, weeks before the preseason even began that this is a team on a mission. And I think this team sort of magnifies how strong they were.
You look at the running backs, couple mid-pin guys in there, Cole Bartram, like you mentioned, Angel Cabrera from Hershey. They had a surprising year. Desir Hollingsworth's a kid who didn't get a lot of press out Cathedral Prep. Very diminutive guy, but he's explosive. Watched a lot of his film. Josh Smith makes it from Mechanicsburg, a wide receiver. Scoop Smith, great name at 5'6", 135-pound sophomore from Woodland Hills. You'll be hearing a lot more about. Makes it. The offensive line group, I think Ryan Corey was the best offensive lineman in the state this year at Pine Richland. Devontae Cooley's another pit guy. There's pit guys all over this thing.
Oh, yeah. You missed Julian Duggar, too.
And then Zach Tomasovich, who I really like for Penn Trafford, who's also, I think, going to Army. Which, if Army gets all these guys on campus and suited up, they got some great ball players in Pennsylvania. Because that kid's 6'5", 305, started as a freshman in the state title game. Just really good group there.
We skipped over Aiden Black too. Is one of the you can make an argument best tight end in the state.
Yep, going to Stanford, and he had 9.5 sacks.
Yeah.
So and then I'm just running through the list real quick. Now I'll let you. Mickey Vaccarello, Peters Township, was on a lot of different teams across the state. Quentin Faust, Ephrata, he had like 170 tackles.
Yep.
Ken Wosley's the Penn State committed defensive back, makes it. Jackson Ponds, Ja Boyd, Nathan Lusk, shout out to him, Cedar Cliff. anything else that's 5A team standing out to you guys? I just wanted to throw out a couple names there that really jumped off the board at me.
Well, I think to signal back to the LL situation too, it was ironic to me because I just pieced it. I try to put these teams together in order 1, 2, 3, obviously because they come out first day, and then 4, 5, 6. So I sort of work from smallest to highest, and it was interesting that the 3 offensive athletes who I toggled were all from the LL. And Longenecker from Cocalico, who certainly deserved to be on this team. Kai Harding from Garden Spot, their quarterback, and Sam McCracken, also quarterback from Ephrata, who just did so much for that team. And nobody, I don't think anybody outside Ephrata saw Ephrata coming to where they were and the kind of season they had. So just from that perspective too, and I will mention one more thing about Nathan Lusk. I don't think we had a tremendous amount of athlete nominations, or at least guys I put in the athlete if they were a dual position or where to go. But Lusk was one of the highest vote getters we had in 5A. So that was very interesting. I mean, the
good to get
voters-
Cedar Cliff some recognition on this because they really did. I mean, I've said it on this podcast plenty of times, but you give Colin Gillen a competitive football team, they're going to win a lot of football games, and
Yep.
they might not have sometimes a lot of stars, like Jonte Morris and things like that. But this year it really wasn't a star-driven team that got them to where it was. Just they had a lot of really solid players, but I thought Lusk was kind of the guy that kept popping on film and kept popping. Every week when we did our stars when he was healthy, he missed a couple games, but every week he had a big, and it's kind of easy to overlook those teams, right? When you get to these type of ballots where they don't really have some guy with crazy stats. Eric Shriver had a good year, but not one that would probably get him all state consideration. So good to see Lusk make it.
We'll jump into 6A real quick, guys. The quarterback position there, Epler. Samaj Jones wins player of the year. But Matt Zollers from Spring Ford, who, Evan Wheaton came here, tooting his horn. Tyrese Smith called him the God of Thunder in his story when he came to Cumberland Valley and put 63 on the Eagles in a game that ended with 9 minutes left because of thunder and lightning. He's got a bunch of big offers. Hayden Johnson, 49 touchdowns, no interceptions in Manheim Township. He was amazing. Logan Kushner, obviously, we saw him. Samaj Jones, Peyton Weiner out of Pittsburgh Central Catholic. That is a special group, I think, of quarterbacks. A lot of guys there who were like outside of Zollers, if they were probably 3 inches taller, would be going to a lot bigger programs. Zollers is going to have a chance, but I mean, Samaj is going to Cincinnati, but that's a great group.
Oh, it's a fantastic group. And I will say this too. Hayden Johnson, for the longest time, was neck and neck with Samaj Jones for player of the year. I mean, there were a lot of guys on Hayden Johnson. They got a chance to see him play.
Do you think that's almost a vote of protest against St. Joe's Prep a little bit there, going against kind of a guy? Because I mean, it's 3 straight titles in 4 years for Samaj, and
I think there's probably some truth to that, Dan. But I look at Imhotep sort of the same way. I look at Bishop McDevitt sort of the same way. You know what I mean? Those guys are they're in it. Aliquippa. I mean, Aliquippa certainly was not. I mean, they were well represented last year. They had 7 guys and finished as state runners up. And this year, I think it's probably close to that number. It's at least 6 that I can think of.
Yeah, I guess I just said that because St. Joe's Prep has been kind of, the inflection point of the argument, right? Where it's like they're kind of used as the example. So I was wondering if maybe some people voting kind of like, hey, I'm not going to give them a player of the year because their team's so good. So
exactly, yeah. And the biggest really part of this team for me too was the linebacking core. I mean, just look at where these guys are going. I mean, Saka obviously for St. Joe's Prep is not committed yet, but or is he?
I don't think he is. No, I mix up him and Specca all the time.
Yeah, Specca obviously is already a senior, but and obviously Michael Gall and Alex Salve from Cumberland Valley had an unbelievable season.
I mean, your first 2 linebackers is Specca's Penn State, Cole Sullivan from Central Catholic,
Michigan.
Both is Michigan.
Yeah.
Saka's going to go wherever he wants to go.
Yeah, Salve's a baseball guy, but still, I mean, it's such an impressive list, and even the guys who were not selected, there were some really good guys too. Obviously on that whole list. I mean, that's the first group that I sort of lean into when it comes to this. But yeah, quarterback has been. All these guys deserved it. I mean, Samaj obviously being player of the year by a couple of votes. So, and then I think the running backs in this situation too. I think you knew Goff from Central York was sort of a shoe in, and I think Leonardi was a shoe in too. Uh, Porter obviously being in Central Dolphin East, the team that obviously didn't do didn't make the playoffs and that sort of thing, but he had a tremendous season too. And Trey Tremba has been awesome.
So Jared Porter may have been, and Dan saw him a good bit. He may have been the most talented running back in the mid pen.
No running back. I don't think I've seen a running back even when Harrisburg got killed by St. Joe's Prep. I don't think I saw an individual running back tear up a Harrisburg defense the way Jared Porter did this year. Like you don't see, and it's not like CD East has like a Wisconsin offensive line behind them. It's a fine offensive line, but Jared Porter I think he had an incredible season. I know Lance Dean keeps beating the drum that he thinks he's the best running back in the state. I know a lot of people are going to roll their eyes and say that's coach speak, but he had such a good year. And he's not a kid that's going to do a lot of talking about himself either. So he's not the one that's going to kind of build his own hype. He first week after football season ended, he was at our media day for wrestling. So I don't think he's going to be the guy to beat his own drum, but I was glad to see him make the list because he deserved it, especially after kind of an up and down season last year where he didn't really have a great rushing season.
Is he the joystick? Is that
I know that's Michael Scott, I think.
Oh, is that who it is? Okay.
Michael Scott out of Dallastown, but Trumbull's another guy, Army commit, okay, and a really good player. Real quick, the wide receivers, Pete Gonzalez is going to Penn State, Pittsburgh Central Catholic, he made it. David Washington Jr., who you mentioned, is going to Kentucky, he made it. They're the big names, but the other three receivers on here are guys who I think are they're not as heralded, but I really like. I'm probably going to butcher his last name, but Mason
Keener,
yeah,
from Nazareth. He was a two-way guy who put up big numbers for them. They had a really good year. Landon Kennel, as you know, I think he had close to 90 catches, may have had over 90 again, and like 26 or 27 touchdowns. Mason Scott is a guy who was a track runner who kind of came out to spring forward. He's getting some offers now, like Lafayette and stuff. If they keep him on that level, that kid is explosive as all get out, man. I really like him. So that's a strong receiver group too.
It is. It's a very strong 6A squad. I mean, extremely strong. A lot of great athletes, and obviously the interior linemen too are pretty impressive.
A couple Harrisburg guys on there. Kevin Brown is a guy who Dan, I think, discovered as a freshman last year. Dan was texting me when Harrisburg had their scrimmage. He's like, you got to see this huge kid out here.
No, I think I asked you, have you heard anything about this Kevin Brown kid? Everyone's telling me he's a Power 5 player, and we haven't heard a single word about him.
He looks like
it's Tim Brown's kid.
Yeah. Right? I mean, Dan, you watch a lot of fight. He's cut up like that, guys. He has muscles and he's 6'5", 250.
It's like the frame, right? It's the long, not like it's the new lineman frame, right? You're no longer like, you're still, sometimes you want the big kind of 350, 360 pound guys. But a lot of these teams, like colleges, NFL teams, they're looking for the guys that almost look like tight ends and they can just put 40 pounds on. I remember when I was at covering Pitt, when I was at the student paper there, they had a tight end from Delaware walk on. He was 6'6", 6'7", 200 pounds. His name was Brian O'Neill. Puts on 120 pounds pretty much. Something, maybe not that much, but puts on 70 pounds, becomes an all-pro, $100 million player in the NFL. That's what these guys are looking for.
How about guys who could fight in the UFC? Sean Kenny made it too as a defensive lineman. Could have made it as an offensive lineman because he's a heck of an offensive lineman. He's also a heck of a defensive lineman. I think he had like 11 sacks. He's a really good heavyweight wrestler in the state, probably one of the tops in the state. And Ryan Epps from Harrisburg made it, 13 sacks. And I think he wants to be like in the FBI or something. I did a story with him, and he was telling me about, he's going to study criminal justice. I think he's a Lock Haven commit. And I was like, you want to be a cop? He's like, oh no. Like, I want to get big criminals.
Well, he could literally get big criminals because he's sacking plenty of guys already. And then they've also got maybe the best kicker in the state, in Matthew Parker on here too. That kid has a leg. I watched when I covered some of their games. I know some people over in York, and they were telling me watch this kid kick during warmups. Now that said, as a Patriots fan, I don't really trust District 3 kickers anymore. So because of the Chad Ryland experience. So,
well, guys, I think that's about it. We wrap up the All-State stuff. It was a heck of a good run for the year for all that stuff. And I think that pretty much wraps up all of our postseason statewide and local. There's probably a few more teams coming out for different things. The votes were cast. All the fools voted.
Yeah, exactly.
And all the foolish votes were tabulated. So
interesting.
If you're gonna make that critique, you got to pull the photo of you wearing the school's sweatshirt off your social media.
I'm at a loss for this. Maybe we could explain this to me off air.
It's an inside joke, Dan. We'll explain it to you afterwards.
I'm just saying, look, whatever. Look, first of all, you should just call everybody. But if you're gonna make that critique, take the school shirt off of your profile pictures.
You look out the window. Beyond
all
the window.
love, though. All love, and it is what it is.
Exactly.
All good for being. But hey, look, guys, tell them how to follow you guys. We still got. Look, we're going into signing day again. Now about a month away, February. We got some more stuff to talk about. We'll come back and talk about some Big 33 stuff probably in the next week or two here. And then signing day and getting into that stuff. We keep teasing. There's a bunch of good local guys like Macklin Ayers, who had a heck of a career at Dartmouth. He's in the transfer portal.
Absolutely.
Nick Kameni from Stony Brook. We got a bunch of good local guys in the transfer portal. And so there's a lot to talk about. Guys, tell them how to find you on social media.
Dan_Sostek. Easy.
Yep.
I'm on X at 3Jacker.
And I'm at Sports by B Linder. Check out all our stuff at PennLive.com. We'll have more coming out. And until next week, we'll see you then.
The UPMC sports medicine experts in Central PA are here to help keep you in the game and improve your quality of life, no matter your age or activity level. Visit upmc.com/Central PA SportsMed to learn more.